Hi everybody, welcome back to Spooky Scary Storytime. I know it's been a minute. I'm so happy to be back. I hope everybody's having a good start to their holiday season so far. I had some family in town for Thanksgiving. It was chaotic, but we're back. So today we are going to do another compilation style episode, and all of these stories involve animals. Reincarnation, soul pets, things of that nature. And while these stories aren't necessarily spooky scary, I still think that they fit the theme of the channel because they deal with subjects that may seem too woo-woo for people who may have not experienced something like this with an animal. They seem otherwise unbelievable to the outside eye, but I think that they're all possible. I think that they're all likely, and I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to tell the stories. I personally have had some interesting experiences with animals. The one that stands out as I was going over these stories and picking them for this compilation is the story about my grandpa and his dog Coco. My grandpa died when I was 11, and he was very sick. He was on hospice. But Coco was by his side from the time he was a puppy. He was my grandpa, my grandma's dog. My grandma died before my grandpa did. So after my grandma died, my grandpa really relied on Coco as just his little buddy. He took him everywhere. And so my grandpa unfortunately passed away on hospice. And the day after he passed away, Coco, who never left our side, ran out in the middle of the street and was instantly hit and killed by a car. It was very sad, but everybody in my family who are heavily spiritual people all kind of said, well, he wanted to be with grandpa. And maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But if nothing else, it did make everybody feel a little bit better from two tragedies at once. There's some other stories I have about animals, but I'll save those for another time. If you're new here, Spooky Scary Storytime is the series where I share allegedly true listener submitted stories about the creepiest or most unbelievable things that has ever happened to them. I hope you enjoy. We're going to start off with a very old story that I told sort of when I started Spooky Scary Storytime. It's about a year old. It's about a janitor who worked at a zoo who believed that she had a telepathic communication with a dolphin that was in captivity at that zoo. And it was one of the stories I think that helped my channel take off. I think a lot of people, it resonated with a lot of people. The other stories are similar, but I wanted to keep this episode sweet. I didn't want to do anything scary about animals. So I hope you enjoy. I know a lot of people have very special stories about animals themselves. So if you feel inclined, feel free to share in the comments and we'll get right to it. A woman named Cynthia emailed me and she said that she wanted to share her spooky scary story time about being able to communicate telepathically with dolphins while working overnights as a janitor in the dolphin exhibit at a zoo. She did not want me to use her real name. She did not want me to name the zoo, but she said that she does not consider herself a person that is telepathic. She's never had an experience like this before, but she has a whole new view on animals after this experience. And although this doesn't fit the typical theme of spooky scary story time, I feel like it's weird enough to share, but forewarning, it is a little bit sad, so maybe just skip this one if you don't want to cry, because I definitely teared up a little bit after I read this email. So Cynthia said 20 years ago she started working overnights as a janitor at a zoo. She was a single mother. She did not have a wide variety skill set. She never graduated high school and her son was in grade school. She took the overnight janitor job because it allowed her time with her son in the day. She would work all night while her son was at her father's house. Then she would come home, take him to school, and then sleep while he was at school, pick him up and spend the evenings with him before going back to work. The schedule was working for her. She was assigned specifically the dolphin exhibit. If you've ever been to a dolphin show at a zoo or an aquarium, you know what I'm talking about. The big arena with the pool in the middle where the dolphins perform tricks. That was her assignment. And she said it was always filthy. There was always like popcorn, things that she had to pick up at the end of the night, but she actually liked it. It was quiet. The only sounds were the water filtering and the water splashing. And she thought watching the dolphins was peaceful. She thought they were beautiful and smart. She would watch them play. And she said to her, the best of her knowledge, she thinks that the zoo took good care of them. One night she's working and she comes across a little rat that is drowning in a puddle of water. It can't get out. So she takes it out. It was like half alive, half breathing. So she actually gave it mouth-to-mouth CPR. She said she doesn't know what possessed her to do it, but she just didn't want to watch it suffer. The rat gasped. It let out a little cough. She said she didn't know what to do. It was the end of her shift. So she just took it home with her. She said up to this point, she never had like a particular penchant for rats or anything like that. They actually kind of grossed her out, but she felt bad for it and she didn't know what to do. So she just brought it home. And that rat ended up being a pet to her family for the next 4 years. But I digress. She gets back to work the next night. She's cleaning. She's doing her normal routine. She gets down to the tank and she's wiping down the glass where people can walk up and see the dolphins closer. And she notices that one of the dolphins, who she calls Nia, Nia was following her as she was wiping down the glass. So she kind of looks at her and she noticed that Nia was watching her with like a certain intensity that she had never experienced before. She said she tried to engage with her. She was waving. She's like, hi. And Nia wasn't doing anything. She was just watching her. But every time she would take a step, Nia would follow. Nia was focused, watching her every move. She was was cleaning for a little while longer, and then she heard her name, clear as day, Cynthia. Cynthia was immediately confused because she always worked alone. There was never anyone in that building. So she turns around. She thinks maybe it's a security guard or somebody there that's not supposed to be there, and there's nobody there. So she goes back to cleaning, and she hears it again, Cynthia. She said it wasn't coming from anywhere, but it was coming from everywhere at the same time. And then she realized it was coming from her own head. So she's like, I'm losing it. I'm hearing voices. I am sleep deprived. Clearly, I need to go home. But she looks up, she looks into the tank, and Nia is floating there, staring at her with the same intensity. And she hears it again, Cynthia. And she believes at this point that it is coming telepathically from Nia the dolphin. Side of the glass, just staring at Nia, Nia staring at her. And then Nia says, what? Cynthia is like questioning her own sanity. She's like, there's no way this dolphin's talking to me. She continues cleaning the glass, and Nia says it again. What are you doing? So Cynthia is like, what do I have to lose? Like, no one's here to witness this. Like, so she decides she's going to talk to the dolphin back. She goes, I'm cleaning, I'm working. And Nia says, what's working? And she said that night she realized that dolphins can communicate with humans, but they don't communicate the same way that humans do. It's not in words. It's in intuition. It's in thoughts. It's in actions. And it's in feelings. But she could hear her voice clear as day. And that night marked the first of many conversations that Cynthia would have with Nia. Cynthia said that she knew that she would never, ever be able to prove that she was having conversations with Nia, and even if she was, nobody would ever believe her anyway. But she took solace in the fact that she could communicate with Nia, and Nia became a friend. And Nia was insanely curious. She wanted to know everything about Cynthia, all about what she did outside of work, which was a concept that she really struggled to understand, regardless of how many times Cynthia explained it. When Cynthia tried to explain why she was working, which was to provide for her son, Nia asked, what's a son? And Cynthia explained it as a child, the same people that come to watch you perform. To which Nia asked, why do they come to watch me perform? Cynthia explained to her that it was a form of entertainment, and Nia expressed to her that she wanted to go back to see her own son, her own family. It became a constant topic of conversation. She would come in, they would have their normal chat. Nia would ultimately ask her, can you help me go back home? Nia expressed multiple times to Cynthia that although she was well cared for, well fed, she wanted to go home and she felt disconnected from something she couldn't describe. Cynthia continued having conversations with Nia for about a year when one night Nia calls her over to the tank and she reveals to her that she's pregnant. Cynthia immediately felt an overwhelming sense of joy for Nia. But her sense of excitement was quickly overshadowed by Nia's seeming sadness. She asked her what was wrong, and Nia tells her something is wrong with my son. Meanwhile, the zoo was very excited about Nia's pregnancy. They took her off shows, off performances. She didn't have to work. But Cynthia would make special trips to see her in her tank, and Nia continued to tell her something is wrong. So Cynthia decides she has to do something. She goes to the zoo director. I misspoke. I'm sorry. It was not the zoo director. I just checked the email. She said it was her supervisor. So she goes to the supervisor and she says, I think something is wrong with Nia and her baby. And her supervisor basically just tells her, it's fine. Dolphins give birth in captivity all the time. Nothing is wrong. She's being closely monitored by a team of aquatic vets. She is fine. Cynthia tells Nia, look, I'm working on it. I told them that you think something is wrong. They said that you're fine. They said that there's vets monitoring and everything with your baby is fine. And Nia tells her, no, something is wrong with my son. Everything was not fine. A few months later, Cynthia was not there when it happened, but she said she came into work to find out that Nia had given birth and her baby was born stillborn. She said she cannot express the grief that she felt for Nia. It was if it was her own. She said she still feels a sense of sadness and grief for Nia. She went to see her that night and Nia was just floating there looking at her, but she wouldn't talk. She said she swam up to her. She was just floating there, radiating a sense of sadness so deep that Cynthia said it almost broke her. Cynthia said Nia never spoke to her again. It was like she shut her out, and Nia was actually transferred out of the zoo to another zoo not long after that, which was when Cynthia decided it was time for her to quit. She says she left because the weight of what she experienced, as well as just feeling helpless because she was just a janitor, was too much for her to bear. She says she does not know what happened to Nia, where she ended up, but since then she cannot work with animals in captivity of any kind. She said she has never had another experience feeling a telepathic connection with an animal, but she ended her email by saying she doesn't care if anyone believes her. She knows that it was real, and she asked me to ask my audience to be careful of the organizations you support, because often the ones that suffer the most are the ones without voices. I'm literally trying not to cry because that is maybe the saddest story I've gotten so far. Keep sending me your spooky, scary stories. You're weird, you're outrageous. The ones that you think no one will believe, I'll keep adding them to this playlist. If you've ever lost a pet that you love dearly, maybe you will meet them again. According to a man named Matt who emailed and said he wanted to share his story about reincarnation and soul ties with animals. This story isn't necessarily spooky scary, but it is sad. It's also heartwarming in a way, so trigger warning. But when Matt was 22, he and a couple of roommates moved into a house outside of Detroit. They were all out of college. They had no money really, and it was kind of a rundown area. Right off the bat, they noticed that one of the neighbors is an older guy, and he has a couple dogs that he keeps chained up outside. And the dogs don't look like they're starving or anything, but it's not a good situation. Like, they're just always outside. They're chained up. They're always barking. And in the winter, they actually end up calling the police on the neighbor for animal welfare to have them come out and check him out. But
The police can't do anything because apparently he had proper food, he had proper water, they had access to like shelter, and it wasn't below freezing, so there's really nothing they can do. They did have a chain link fence in their backyard, and one of Matt's roommates had a dog. One day they hear a bunch of commotion in the backyard, so they go out to check it out, and they notice that one of the neighbor's dogs has broken into their yard. It was like a very dark brown, almost black lab mix, maybe pit mix, just a mutt. So they bring it back to the guy's house, and the guy seems like mad that the dog got out, and he's yelling and cussing at the dog, and they were like, we shouldn't have brought this dog back. The dog keeps breaking out. Somehow it's breaking its chain, or it's breaking the link on its collar, and it's ending up back in their yard. And every time they go to bring it back, the dog looks at Matt like, please don't bring me back there. He said that's the only way he could describe it. So finally he's had enough, and he's like, you know what? I'm not bringing the dog back. Like, it can just stay in the yard. I'll bring it in the house. And the first time he brings it in the house, the neighbor comes over and he's screaming at Matt about stealing his dog, calling the dog a bunch of names, screaming at it to get out of Matt's house. This happens a couple more times. And finally Matt just says, what do you want for the dog? Like, I will buy the dog from you. The guy's just like, I'm not going to give you my dog, like blah, blah, blah. I put so much time and effort. And also by this point, Matt had realized that this is a female dog. He was calling it coffee because it was like a really, really dark brown color. And his girlfriend at the time was like, oh, we should call it black coffee because it looks like the coffee before you put the cream in it. So he has like a connection to this dog, right? Like, even though he doesn't know the dog's actual name. And the guy finally is like, give me $500 and you can have it. So Matt's like, fine, whatever. But he didn't have $500. So he calls his girlfriend. He's like, hey, can I have $500? Like, I want to buy this dog. And his girlfriend likes the dog too. So she's like, okay. So they scrounge up the $500. They buy the dog. And this dog becomes spoiled very quickly. Matt said he had never had a pet as an adult. Like, he had grown up with dogs, but he never felt a connection like he did with this dog. Like, this dog was sleeping in his bed every night. But it did have a plethora of health issues. Like, when he took it to the vet, it had worms, it had fleas, it had to have all of these medications. But slowly it gets healthier and it starts actually changing colors. Like, its fur gets lighter, I guess, as it gets healthier. And it turns into this really like pretty marbled brown color. And his girlfriend said, oh, we should start calling her coffee creamer now instead of black coffee because she looks like coffee with cream in it. So eventually he moves out of that house. He still has the dog. The dog is doing well. He doesn't really know how old Coffee Creamer was because she was an adult when she started coming over there. So, but he was guessing she was around like 2 or 3 when he got her. Him and his girlfriend end up moving into a nicer neighborhood. His girlfriend gets pregnant. They still have Coffee Creamer. They have a little girl. They were living in a much nicer area after their daughter's born. And one of the cute things that Coffee Creamer did was they trained her to go get their daughter's baby blanket. And it was always the same blue baby blanket. She would go and get it and she would bring it in like she was trying to help care for the baby. When their daughter was 2, so Coffee Creamer is probably between the age of like 8 and 10 at this point. They're out in the front yard. Matt is watering the bushes. His daughter's playing in the grass. Matt's like 10 feet away. And Coffee Creamer is just laying in the grass with the daughter. He said she was a very good dog. She never ran. She was like very obedient and she loved the baby. Matt hears barking. He turns around and a stray dog is now barreling down the street toward his daughter. Coffee Creamer jumps up, protects the baby. There is a massive dog fight. Matt grabs his daughter, and unfortunately, Coffee Creamer sustains fatal injuries. She passes away. Matt was devastated, as was his girlfriend. It's very traumatic, very horrible, very sad situation all around. But later on, Matt's girlfriend's mom is over at their house, and she says, oh, you know, you have to look at this as Coffee Creamer saved your daughter. Like, she sacrificed herself to save your daughter, and she didn't die in vain. And Matt was pretty tore up about it for a long time. He was like, how could I have done this differently? He beat himself up about it. You know, his girlfriend tried to make him feel better. She's like, do you want to get another dog? He's like, I don't want another dog. He said he could not think about going through all of that again and trying to love another dog the way that he loved this dog. 2 years later, their daughter is 4. They are at some kind of shopping center, and they notice that there's a big chain pet store next to the store that they're shopping at as they're coming out, and they're holding a local Humane Society rescue event. And the daughter sees all the puppies outside and she wants to go see them. And so they walk over, and there's a litter of puppies that were probably like 3 or 4 months old. This one puppy in particular, which looks like a lab pit mix, same color that Coffee Creamer was, ends up coming over and taking a particular interest in their daughter, and she's playing with it. And Matt's girlfriend looks at him and she's like, should we get a dog? And he's like, no, I'm not getting another dog. The adoption agent or Humane Society person walks over and she says, oh, Sugar really likes you. And Matt's girlfriend's like, her name is Sugar. And she's like, yeah, all these puppies were born in a litter and we gave them all like coffee related names. She's like, we named this one Sugar because she looks like coffee after you add cream and sugar to it. Long story short, they end up with the dog. So Matt is like not really attached to this dog, but he's happy that his girlfriend and his daughter are happy. They have the puppy a couple weeks. One day his girlfriend's at work. He's at home alone with the dog and his daughter. They're all sitting in the living room watching TV. His daughter is like falling asleep on the couch, and he looks at the dog and like instinctually he thinks, go get the baby blanket. And then he's like, what am I doing? Like, this isn't my dog. And he said the way the dog looked at him was like almost like it read his thoughts, like telepathically. And it got up, went in his daughter's room and brought out the same blue baby blanket that Coffee Creamer used to bring out. He said it was one of those things that just made him stop and think that maybe he understands nothing. And part of him thinks that either Coffee Creamer's spirit is still around guiding this dog, or it's Coffee Creamer come back because she wasn't done with him. They've now had Sugar for 2 years, and Sugar's a great dog. She is extremely well behaved. She loves the daughter. It is clearly the daughter's dog. But he said the whole experience has had like a spiritual impact on him, and he thinks that animal and our relationship with them goes way deeper than we can even imagine. He said, I shared this because I just wanted to bring peace to anyone who's maybe lost an animal that they love dearly, because I believe that this is my dog come back. He said, I was never a spiritual person, but this has changed my beliefs. Matt didn't want to be tagged, but he'll be seeing the comments if you have any words for him. And if you have a spooky, scary story time, I would love to read it.
Cam message and he was like, I want to share the story about how cats are spiritual protectors. He's like, I don't think you're going to use this because it's not really spooky scary, but I like the story. And also, this isn't the first time we're hearing about cats being spiritual protectors or like tied to the divine. Like all throughout history, all throughout different cultures, people worshipped cats. We have ancient Egypt as perhaps the most famous example, where cats were linked to the goddess Bastet, who protected women, fertility, and homes. People would mummify their cats when they passed away and often bury them with the owners. Soldiers in ancient Egypt would reportedly surrender before harming a cat because that's how sacred they were. In Norse and Viking culture, cats were the sacred companions of Freya, who was the goddess of love, fertility, and magic. New brides were often gifted cats, a wedding gift for good fortune, and cats were often thought of as the sacred helpers of practicing witches, which is likely where the modern witch-cat connection comes from. Cats even have a deep spiritual symbolism in ancient Japanese folklore, and while the Japanese didn't necessarily worship the cats, they did believe that they communicated with the spirit world. Many temples even kept cats and considered them spiritually sensitive, and so knowing all this, I'm going to tell you Cam's story. 7 years ago, Cam was dating this girl, and one day she calls him up. She's like, hey, I have an early birthday gift for you. Can I come by? And he's like, sure, come on over. So she gets there. She puts her purse down on the floor. She's like, I know this is unexpected and not exactly what you wanted, but I think it's a good idea. And out of her purse pops a little kitten. And Cam was just kind of looking around like, this is my gift, because he was not a cat person. He said he had grown up with dogs, considered himself a dog lover, but he didn't currently have one because of his work schedule. Not wanting to hurt his girlfriend's feelings, he's open to it. So he sits down on the floor, and as he sits down on the floor, the cat jumps out of the purse, runs across the floor to him, and starts pawing and purring in his lap. Like, I locked eyes with that kitten and I was in love. I knew I was keeping that cat. And his girlfriend was like, wow, that's really surprising that she's taking a liking to you. Cam's like, why, what's up? And she's like, well, my friends found that cat. It was feral. It hated people. It scratched me trying to put it in the purse. It's like, I at least thought that it was going to take some getting used to. Cam said he did not get that vibe from her at all. He named her Half a Cat. He said she was this adorable little calico with super deep eyes that looked into the souls of anyone she met. His family, his friends, all loved him immediately after meeting her. Cam said he had a connection with Half a Cat that he has never felt with another animal. They were just bonded somehow that he still can't explain. At this point in his email, Cam told me that he had always struggled with sleep paralysis, like since he was a kid. And in fact, it wasn't until he was older that he realized that not everybody had sleep paralysis. The time that he was a boy, maybe once or twice a week, he would have horrible dreams of dark and horrendous things. The time Half a Cat came into his life, he had been dealing with it so long that he just accepted it as part of his sleep, as part of who he was, and he didn't ever expect it to go away. But about a week after getting Half a Cat, he woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't scream, couldn't move, and he was having that same feeling of pressure on his chest of something in the room. Half a Cat, who was sleeping in a little bed he had bought her next to the bed, jumped up on the bed, ran to the end of it, and started hissing. That as she did, this feeling of relief from this terror that I'd been experiencing my entire life just came over me, and I knew that she saw whatever has been terrorizing me my entire life. The craziest thing is he said that was the last time he ever experienced sleep paralysis after struggling with it for 20 years. Stranger though, Hank wants to say hi. Say hi. Hi. Even stranger though, he had had dreams of strange creatures stalking outside of his windows at night. Anytime he had those dreams, he would wake up to see Half a Cat staring outside the window. He said Half a Cat recently passed away after being with him her entire life. She was very loved, but he wanted to share this because he wanted people to know that if you feel a strange connection to your cat that you think is more than meets the eye, it's because it probably is. Spooky Scary Storytime is a series where I share allegedly true, spooky, scary, unbelievable stories from listeners. If you have a story, we would love to hear it. The story came from Kitty, and Kitty says that she and her family are very strong believers in their respective faiths. Her mom is a practicing witch, but her grandma was a devout Baptist. Even though her mother's beliefs and her grandmother's beliefs were very different, she grew up thinking that there was more than meets the eye. And she said she grew up with very powerful gifts, but when she was about 6 or 7, she didn't yet understand how powerful her gifts were. That she always knew that she was in tune with nature in a way that others may not be on the surface level. For instance, she talked to trees and the trees would talk back. She said injured animals always found their way to her. She said she now understands that she is a healer, and she tries to use and practice that gift in a way that helps all living things. But when she was about 6, she had an experience that really solidified this belief. She grew up with a lot of dogs, and on one mild spring day, she heard a big commotion outside. The dogs were barking, and she looked out the window and saw that about 12 blue jays were swooping at one of the dogs. She walked outside, got the dog in the house, and then went out to see what all the commotion was about. She knew at this age that blue jays were territorial birds. She knew a lot about animals and nature in general. When she got back outside to see what the blue jays were swooping at the dog all about, she noticed that one blue jay in particular stopped a few feet from her and then hopped over. She followed it and found an injured baby blue jay on the ground. It seemed injured. It wasn't moving. Its wings may have been broken. She scooped it up and was planning on running into the house when a raven swooped down. It flew down so close to her face that she could feel its wings brush her cheek. She said this thing was absolutely blocking me from going in the house. I didn't know what to do. I started crying and I fell to my knees because I was afraid it was going to hurt me or the baby blue jay. She said the blue jay stopped cawing and she looked down at this little baby bird and didn't see the chest moving up and down. She didn't feel a heartbeat and she thought it was dead. She said, I was on my knees. I was sobbing. I was praying to any gods that were listening, to the trees for help, to please save this baby bird. Meanwhile, this raven, which she said she knows was a raven because it was much bigger than a crow, was flapping in her face. She said all she could do was cover her face and hold the baby bird in both hands. And as she did, she felt her hands get very warm. Raven stopped flapping its wings in her face and landed a few feet away. It was watching her. She looked down in her hands and saw that the baby bird that was just dead in her hands had come back to life. She said she had no idea what was happening, and she must have held it for a few seconds just trying to process that it was now alive. It had just been dead a few seconds before. The blue jays flew away, and seconds later, the baby blue jay that was just in her hands followed them. She said the raven took flight, but before it did, touched her on the shoulder. The next thing she remembers, she was waking up in the grass in her yard where she had just been holding this baby bird. Her mother was standing over her, and her mother's face looked terrified. She got up and she noticed that all the grass where she stood was dead. Mother explained that she had been watching from the kitchen window and saw her fall after what she perceived was the raven attacking her. She asked what happened, and when she told her, her mother scolded her and said, never do that again. Never ask unknown entities for help. Never bring something back from the dead. Mother then told her not to tell anyone what she could do. She said after that, she went to sleep and she didn't wake up for an entire day, but the blue jays stayed in the trees. Sometimes they would bring her things like hair ribbons, and they even went so far as to chase a neighborhood kid that bullied her one day. She said, now that I'm older, I believe the raven was there to show me my power, maybe as a guide, but I asked my mother about it after growing up, and my mother says she doesn't remember. She said, I can still heal things to this day, but heeding my mother's warning, I have never again tried to bring something back from the dead. She said, honestly, it wasn't what the 6-year-old version of her was trying to do anyway. She was just grieving. If you have a spooky, scary story time, something that you think nobody else would believe, please send it in. We would love to hear it. As always, thank you guys for listening. If you're new here, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out so much. If you'd like to support the channel, I do have a Patreon. You can support the channel for as little as $3 a month. Thank you so much to everyone who has already became a Patreon. It really allows me to make this a priority and bring you more stories. So I appreciate you guys more than you know. And for everyone who just listens and maybe who doesn't comment, I appreciate you too. Your attention makes all the difference. You guys just showing up week after week and listening to these stories is incredible. So thank you so much for being part of this community, and I will see you next time. I'll have another video posted probably by this weekend. So I'll see you guys next time.